Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the USA 9/11 first responders, we would like to thank all of you that are here tonight participating in our annual tribute in never forgetting the day of September 11th and the peoples whose lives were forever changed by that day. We are honored in having government officials and spiritual leaders with us. But I would like to focus on one special person that contributes his time, his experience, and in making our message every year to the audience in a clear and consistent manner. That only one person has the capability to do, and who we love and respect and look up to as a legend in the communication to the people. Mr. Jim Sackett, who deserves acknowledgement and recognition for his dedication to our mission. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jim Sackett. I'll have my $50 now.
The check is in the mail. Well, thank you very much, Dennis, for that kind introduction, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And before we proceed with our tribute to remember what happened 15 years ago, we'd like to take a moment to recognize a group of people that have come together to support this monument and the library for our mission. Two generous companies, Eddie Huggins from Huggins Construction and Burns & Sons Concrete, donated the foundation to install these benches that you see here now covered. We would also like to recognize the people who sponsored these benches here at this memorial site. Miss Lynn Ann White, Frenchie's Crane Service, and Larry Thompson from Southern Park and Play. So at this point in time in our program, I would like to invite those dignitaries to come forward to unveil these beautiful and donated benches.
One, two, three.
In honor of the 9/11 first responders on all the benches. And we appreciate the donation and the work that went into having these at this memorial site. Because of the daylight and the timing here this evening, we'd like to now focus on an annual tradition that was started last year in memory of a very special young girl. The USA 9/11 first responders met a very beautiful young lady named Holly Harris and her best friend and grandmother, Mary Harris, at an event on September 11th. Holly had the most beautiful smile along with her eyes that said so much and had so much meaning behind it and spoke for who was behind those eyes, because Holly could not speak. And the relationship from that day on became an everlasting relationship. Holly and her grandparents would participate in all the events, from parades to Christmas parties and our annual tributes. Because Holly and her grandparents are caring people and caring about children, we'd like to include the memory of the following children in our butterfly release. Jean Marie Wallendorf, who went to work at her career at the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. Austin Stephanos and Perry Cohen, who sailed out to sea from Jupiter and did not come home. Matthew Balish of Martin County, who was a United States Naval Sea Cadet whose future was to serve as a Navy SEAL officer. Matthew lost his life to suicide November 1st, 2013. His family has set up a foundation called Stop and Pink About It. The Matthew Balish Foundation for Prevention of Suicide Among Teens and Military Personnel, which advocates for awareness and prevention. And Ian Zook from the Treasure Coast, a proud United States Marine Corps corporal who paid the ultimate sacrifice while defending our country And I invite now the families of these individuals to come forward to release our butterflies in their memory.
In memory of all of those lost on 9/11 in Hollywood. God bless. Thank you.
Those being remembered are in our hearts and in our minds this evening. That concludes the first portion of our program. We are now going to kind of shift gears and pay special tribute to what happened 15 years ago, September 11th, 2001. This is our tribute. We will start our tribute by posting the colors. Here now to sing our national anthem, Mr. Joseph Riano.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose bushlights and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, it proved through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Now to sing God Bless America, please welcome 12-year-old Michelle McKenna.
God bless America, land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the
We will now have Sharon Paul, Regent of the Halpatioke Chapter, National Society for Daughters of the American Revolution, to come forward to lead us in the America's Creed.
We'd love it if you would join us. I believe
in the United States of America, as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the government, a democracy in the republic, a sovereign nation under many sovereign states, perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity, for which American patriots sacrifice their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty, my country, to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies.
Thank you, ladies. We now welcome a musician who has a passion for ladies and gentlemen, Doc Holloway. Ladies and gentlemen, Doc Holloway. Dennis wanted me at this point to kind of share just a few seconds of my view of what happened 15 years ago. So many years ago, many of us still remember like it was yesterday. One of those events in your lives, you knew where you were, what you were doing, who you were with when you found out that the Twin Towers had been attacked. The world changed forever that September morning. It is still changing. The threat to us is as real as it was on September 11th, 2011. Some parts of the world, it probably is even worse. A perfect example, recent example, is the country of France. We must remain vigilant as individuals, as a country, and just hope and pray that somehow we can get this world to right itself. 15 years, we remember, we will not forget. We'd like to introduce now our first speaker of the evening, Mr. Ed Campy, our re-elected Martin County Commissioner. Mr. Campy is a longtime friend and supporter of the USA 9/11 first responders and its mission statement in never forgetting September 11th. Without the support of Mr. Campy, this monument would not be here this evening for all of us to appreciate. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ed Campy.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, very briefly, I just wanted to say that my heart is warmed by the attendance tonight. Not the number of people that are here, but that there are young people here. And I'd like to thank Dennis and especially his family because in our community, we are so fortunate to have Dennis. Let's give him a round of applause. Without someone like Dennis, communities all across the United States today, it was Sunday. It was a day for football and maybe spending time with family. But it was not a remembrance of 9/11. Dennis and many of those that are here tonight, we're keeping it alive in our hearts because I believe we have no choice. I want to speak specifically to the kids because when we say never forget, some of them weren't even born yet. My son, Nicholas, is here with me tonight. He's a twin. They were born May 16th, 2001. He was 4 months old on September 11th, 2001. Actually, a couple of days before that, I worked in New York City. On the Friday before the Tuesday, I took my 2 new babies and my older daughter, who was 5 at the time, in with me on the Long Island Railroad in to show them off at work, just a couple of short days before that Tuesday. So in our family, and I was there in New York City on 9/11, I lost several friends. I looked right out my office windows and watched the towers fall. So for me, it's very personal. But even if it wasn't, even if you were just an American and you were in Florida or in Ohio or in Nevada or California, we cannot forget, and more importantly for young people, they must remember what's happening. My son will tell you, and you can ask your children and your grandchildren and friends that have children, ask them if they say the Pledge of Allegiance in class every single day. I know they play it over the PA system from the office, but are the kids stopping what they're doing in class? Is the teacher encouraging them to stop for what, 90 seconds? Pay attention. We have to work on those things. I know Mike DiCelizzi's here. He's a school board member. And obviously his attendance here tonight will tell you his passion. We need that to come from the top down. Teachers cannot believe that it's okay to just simply go about the classwork and think of that as just an announcement that's being made over the PA system. We have to make sure that children understand what America is all about. We're all reading in the newspaper what's going on. There should be 1,000 people here tonight. We are very, very fortunate to have this stealing. Dennis gives the credit away very generously to others. But if it wasn't for Dennis and a couple of his friends from the 9/11 organization, there were 18,000 requests throughout the United States for steal. And obviously our piece is spectacular. Some people got the size of a license plate. So I think we're so blessed to not only live in the United States of America, but to specifically live right here in this community. And I just want to tell all of you how humbled I am to be given the opportunity to continue to share with you. And the last thing that I will tell you, and it's a great lesson for all of us as grown-ups, but I think it's a wonderful reminder for children. Twice a day, the clock will be 11 minutes after 9 o'clock, a.m. and p.m. Now, a long, long time ago, maybe a couple of years after 2001, we started in my family to, if you just glanced over at the clock at 9 o'clock, 9:11 in the morning or 9:11 in the evening, it's remarkable how often, if you just look at the time, it's going to be 9:11. And what we do is we just stop for a second and say, rest in peace, God bless America. I am trying, and I would love with all your help, that we start to just take that second, twice a day if possible, and just remember what happened. Because if we remember, we can hopefully make sure that it never happens again. And finally, I will tell you, and I see some members of Martin County Fire Rescue here, when I was witness, when everyone was running away, police and fire and other emergency responders were running in. And they knew what they were running into. I wish God's blessing on all first responders, past, present, and future. And I wish all of you a blessed evening. Thank you so much.
We're also proud to announce our newly re-elected tax collector, Ruth Petruski, who is one of the most patriotic public officials that we know about. and has served Martin County in many different areas of public service. She is with us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Petruski.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. Every one of us remembers where we were, who we were with, and what we were doing the morning of September 11th, 2001. It started out as a beautiful day with a crystal clear sky that made the skyscrapers in New York City sparkle, soon to become a hot and fiery war zone. 4 commercial airliners took off, boarded with innocent men, women, and children, none of whom would survive. The first plane crashed into Tower 1 of the World Trade Center, and just 18 minutes later, a second plane crashed into Tower 2. The crystal clear sky was now filled with smoke. Fires spread, and it was dark. You could barely see. Screams and cries pierced through the heavy smoke and darkness. When the third plane hit the Pentagon, most of us had no idea what to do or where to turn. We just knew America was under attack, and the world watched as the unspeakable horrors unrolled. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation and tear our country apart. But it didn't. Instead, it united us. America stood tall and stood strong. It's not in our first responders' DNA to run the other way. The foundations of our largest steel building shook. All 3 buildings toppled. Yes, the strike took down our buildings, but it couldn't bring down the men and women made of steel that had made it their life's job to protect us. As thousands of people scrambled to get out of the World Trade Center, hundreds of firefighters, law enforcement, military personnel, and even co-workers scrambled to get in and headed right into the raging inferno, charging up those stairs, leading survivors down the steps and carrying the injured on their shoulders, then went right back up all those flights and back down again over and over until the towers fell. Injured were buried in the wreckage, bodies were incinerated and crushed as the building fell down around them. Our first responders continued saving victims, sacrificing their own lives for others who didn't even know their name. The 4th plane never made it to its targeted destination because the passengers stormed the terrace in the cockpit, and all plunged to their death crashing in a field in Pennsylvania. How many lives did these heroes save by courageously sacrificing themselves? The world saw America stand tall that day, saw America stand together, and saw Americans say no to terrorism. We won't run, we won't hide, and we certainly won't fall. And we will never forget those who gave all. Thank you, first responders. God will bless America, that land that we love, still the land of the free because of the brave, a nation that stands united and unafraid because we are Americans, and nothing can change who we are. God bless you all.
A couple of things. You probably have already seen the signature lights that are up behind me representing the 2 towers. And at this point, I would invite you to turn on your candles. The sun is set. Now we would like to welcome Jennifer Salas, Director of the Martin County Library System. Jennifer?
As a native New Yorker, I am so honored that the library system here in Martin County has been able to host this amazing memorial, and the library system is dedicated to continuing this event each year. We hope that we can make it bigger and better each time we put this on, so please spread the word. I also want to thank the Martin County Fire Rescue Department for their support this evening, but also for us to think about all of the local police and sheriff's departments, the fire rescue, the troops, and all that lost their lives on September 11th, both within the attacks as well as the rescuers after. So please also remember to try to find that unique compassion for everyone that I know I felt in New York the months after 9/11, but also that we felt around the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Christine Barton is the mother of Jean Marie Wallendorf, one of the people we are paying tribute to this evening at this ceremony. Is Miss Barton here? No? Well, we can understand that this particular day and evening can be rather rough on people, but our thoughts and prayers are with Christine Barton and Jean Marie Wallendorf. We take great pride in introducing now our brother FDNY Captain Christopher McKnight, one of New York's bravest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Captain Christopher McKnight.
Thank you for having me here and having this beautiful event here. I know Dennis did a lot of work to get this beautiful piece of steel here. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I had 23 years on the New York City Fire Department on 9/11. I was stationed in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. The first 10 years of my career I worked in Manhattan on the Lower East Side. I was very familiar with the Twin Towers. I would take details over to the other end of the battalion. Anytime a fire box or an alarm went off in that building, those two companies went over to the trade towers. Standard protocol in the fire department, a certain amount of engines and trucks would go on every smoke detector that went off. There'd be like 3 engines, 2 trucks, a battalion chief, safety battalion. And they had 4 or 5 of those every day till they kind of got it out of their system and they fixed it and slowed down to 2 or 3 a day. So I was very familiar with that. I used to go there on drill. I knew what would happen if there was a fire. Never in my wildest dreams did I think there'd be a total collapse. I made lieutenant, went out to Brooklyn, made captain, went to Queens, went back to Brooklyn. I worked in Greenpoint. I worked overtime in every company along the east, on the Brooklyn side of the East River, from Greenpoint all the way over to Flatbush. Companies that I worked in on my overtime shifts were all the companies that went to the 9/11. They were the first responders from Brooklyn to go, including my company in Greenpoint. I was actually, it was the first day of my vacation. My mutual partner, Glenn Wilkerson, I would work his night shift, he would work my day shift. I would work his day shift, he would work my night shift. I always worked the first half of the shift. It was my first half. It was my first day of vacation. Glenn worked, went to the World Trade Center. They were in the lobby, told to go to the 70th floor with 3 other engines, 2 trucks. One of the guys was missing, had gone to the restroom. Another company that was supposed to go with him, their guy went to the restroom. They walked over to the restroom, found their guys. The other 3 companies had already made it to the stairway, were on their way up to the stairway. They were walking towards the stairway. Tower 2 collapsed. They were blown across the lobby in the lower floor between the 2 buildings, knocked over the turnstiles. One man hurt his back, another guy hurt something else. They were all shook up. Nobody could see anything. It was total chaos. They got their lights on, figured out that there might have been an explosion, started making headway, found the doorway out to the street, started getting all the civilians out to the street. They made it out to the street. Glenn took a roll call. One of the guys was missing. Told the guys, stay over here, I'm going to go back and find Rob. One of the firefighters that was with him, Kevin Flaherty, talked to him today, talked to him Friday. He posted today on 9/11 exactly what happened to him during that 2 or 3 minutes. And it was like it was yesterday. And he said that the last thing he did was he took this other man's helmet, who was really hurt, left him by the truck under this covering, and went to help Glenn. And Glenn screamed at him, stay with the probie. He stayed with the probie. 30 or 40 seconds later, the second tower came down. Glenn was killed in the street. I watched the tower, second tower, hit the World Trade Center on TV. My brother had called me up. I was in a real good mood. It was my vacation. Thought I was going to have a couple of weeks. The wife had gone back to work. She was a school teacher. Thought I was going to have a week of, fix up the house, do this or that. 15 minutes later, I was in my car heading into Brooklyn. I was on the Long Island Expressway. Anybody familiar with New York? Yeah. When you get to about Queens Boulevard, all the way in, you can see the World Trade Center. Queens Boulevard, the Long Island Expressway, goes underneath, goes above the roadway. There's a couple of buildings on the left. You go underneath, you can't see the Trade Center anymore. Well, when I came out the other side of that, it was bumper-to-bumper traffic. You couldn't move. All the cops and firemen were in the left lane, hitting their horns. All the people that were civilians were getting out of our way, and we were working our way into the city. We got to Maurice Avenue, the road was closed. Well, before I got to Maurice Avenue, the building was gone, the first building. Came out of that little tunnel, my heart completely stopped. Got up to Morris Avenue, showed identification that it was truly a firefighter. They let me through, went to the Greenpoint Avenue Bridge, went over the bridge, went to my fire station, made a couple of phone calls, found out what I was supposed to do, gathered some firemen who also came in from home. We worked our way down to another fire station where we picked up some more equipment because we didn't have any radios. We only have enough radios in the fire station for the guys that are working, maybe one extra. So there were no radios there, so we took the gear that we had. I had my own flashlight and tools. Guys grabbed whatever tools were available. We worked our way down to this fire station in someone's car. We got driven by bus to the Brooklyn Bridge. From the Brooklyn Bridge, I talked a bus driver into taking us over the bridge. We got to the other side, it was like a war zone. The police had machine guns, they had rifles, they had all sorts of riot gear. I felt like I was on a Clint Eastwood movie. They let us through. We got to about 2 or 3 blocks from the Trade Center, and the man let us out. I could see fire trucks as far as you could see. There was nobody at those fire trucks. All those men were dead. If they weren't dead, they were at the pile working on finding whoever they could find. I found the command post, got assignments, made a relay of water, went and made some rescues, was told to get any gear I could out of the fire station that was there, all the hose they could find. We went into the basement of the fire station across from 9/11, 10 and 10, took out all the equipment. I ran into a firefighter there that had survived the collapse. They were in charge of the command post area with the radios and the handy-talkies. They had special equipment because they were right there. They made it out of the building because they knew the building. A lot of guys did. I personally knew 25 firefighters I had worked with over the years that died. I knew about 150 I worked shifts with in all those overtime shifts. The company, 118 truck that they showed the pictures of them waving going over the bridge, I was actually in that firehouse the Sunday night before the Trade Center. Half the crew that was on that night worked the next night and died the next morning at 9/11. I had dinner with them. I worked a 6-hour overtime shift, went home at midnight, said goodbye to them, threw money in on the meal. My first firehouse I ever worked as a lieutenant. I covered a 2-week vacation there. Knew half those guys were still there 13 years later, were still there. It was in 1989 when I worked there the first time. They were still in that company, and they all perished on 9/11. That day, it was like a war zone. I mean, the area was so huge. It was unbelievable that the devastation that was there. Made it back to the firehouse at 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know that my Lieutenant Glenn Wilkinson was dead till 11 o'clock that night. Me and the guys that were there to rescue and do our thing were on one side of the area, and they were on the other side of the area. They went in from West Street. We went in from 5th Avenue. We never got to West Street because of the way the buildings were attacked. We were working on that side of the street. We actually were working on the pile where they made the movie about those 2 cops that were saved. We were working on that pile, and I was with my men as far as you could go without a mask. And we were literally passing equipment up and back. Men were going in with masks on, with equipment, and they were coming back legless. They could barely walk. The heat and from the flames that were down below and the heat that was coming out of that building were more than the mask is only good for about 20 minutes. Under those conditions, maybe 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, guys would come out, and you had to literally help them over one piece of steel, hand them off to the next man, and he helped them, and the procession went on and for hours. We got moved out of there at about 5 o'clock when the Tower 7 show. That was on fire. Crazy people seemed to believe that the government blew the building up. That's baloney. When those planes crashed, pieces of that plane went into all those buildings around it. They were all partially having fires. And we didn't have enough manpower to do anything about that building, and they just let it burn. Eventually it collapsed. They pulled everybody away from it when it started to shake, and about 6:30, 7 o'clock it collapsed. I never got back to that area. About 2 o'clock in the morning, they sent us back to our fire station. I got back about 3:30 in the morning. At 11 o'clock that night, I had found out that Glenn died and the other guys were alive. A friend that I grew up with, his brother, I found out 10 minutes after I was there that he was working that day and he was on the 70th floor. And, put 2 and 2 together to know that he was dead. A couple of days after 9/11, a list came out with 380 names on it. And the first time you read that list, you just cried all the names of the people you knew on. And when I got back to the fire station at 4 o'clock in the morning, I had to tell Glenn Wilkerson's wife, he was one of the only bodies recovered that day. They recovered, I think, 9 bodies. His was because he was outside the building, the firemen that were with him wouldn't leave. They knew where he was. The dogs came. The dogs found his scent, and they dug, and in about 15 feet of rubble, they found Glenn's body. And this could have been one of the pieces of steel that they cut off him. Who knows? They cut steel off of him. It took about 2 or 3 hours to get his body out of there. And he was positive ID'd at about 2 o'clock in the morning, but they knew it was him at about 8 or 9 o'clock, from what I'm told. I drove 50 or 60 miles from the fire station, got to Glenn's house at 6 a.m. in the morning with another lieutenant, donuts, coffee, bagels, cried with his wife and 3 kids, sat there all day as every relative and friend came over, told them over and over again what happened. You know what they wanted to know? Why was it only Glenn? Why didn't the other guys die like they killed Glenn or something? Like, why weren't they with him? Well, the fireman that I just told you about showed up about 3 o'clock, and he told them exactly what happened and basically what he put on Facebook today. And halfway through the story, every hair on his body stood up and started shaking like a leaf. He told all the men out in front of the house that story, went into the house and told all the women. Not one person in his family questioned me after that as to what happened to Glenn. We buried him the Monday after 9/11, and for the next 10 months, all I did was go to funerals, work 24-hour shifts, or go down to the ground zero. A year later, from being burnt out, I retired from the fire department and moved to Jupiter, Florida. I've been living here ever since. Since 9/11, 145 firemen have died. Today, I read something on Facebook where they had all of how many cops, firemen, and EMS workers that perished since 9/11, and there was a thing that said 6,500 people have cancer from 9/11, from the debris from 9/11. It's amazing how many, and the government has done wonders for the people of 9/11. There's a fund now that if you get sick, every year I can go up to New York City. I go every 2 years, but every year I can go up to New York City and get a full physical to make sure they give a special test to make sure we're not sick. I have bad allergies. I've always had them, and every time I went down there, my nose ran like I was sick. And I actually, my nose hurt for over a year. The inside of my nose felt like something burnt the skin or something off it for over a year. Luckily, I don't have any of those serious problems right now. My throat closes up every now and then when I run, and I don't know if it's 9/11 related or just that I can't take the heat down here. But I just read that people are having nerve damage, and my hands lately tighten up on me. I do a lot of stuff with my hands, and I used to bang them around a lot, so it could be that or it could be whatever. But a lot of people are sick from it, and we can never forget what happened to them. And, thank you for coming. And, there's also the soldiers. My wife came down here and became a teacher down here, and at least 4 or 5 of her students here and in Florida have gone over there. Some of them have come back, lost their legs. The government has been taking care of them. One of them, the Gold Star people are wonderful. They built him a house. They educated his high school girlfriend married him. They have a baby now. Gold Star people built the house for him, and they do wonderful work. I have a cross from 9/11, one of the pieces of steel. It was a priest that came over to my fire station, and he was a psychologist. And me and him became really good friends. And he helped my fire station and the fire stations around us get through it. And he's been to my house in Jupiter, and he would go down to 9/11 and talk to everybody. And the construction workers cut these little crosses out of the steel, and he gave me one. Well, I worked at the Jupiter Lighthouse for 12 years. I just stopped working there in July. And one of the guys who works there is a Marine, and his son's a Marine. And his son's been over there 3 times. The last time he went, he took my cross with him. I gave it to him. And I said, I'm going to give you this so that, maybe it'll protect you while you're over there. When you come back, I want you to give it back to me. Well, he was in a Humvee that exploded. The only day that he didn't he packed it in his bag. The only day that he didn't pack that bag in the compartment was that day, and he had it under his seat, under his rear end. And doctors told him that if that bomb had blown 2 inches closer to his body, he wouldn't be here. And somebody was almost 7 feet off the ground. He had that shaken syndrome for about. He was in the. Told his father he was okay. He was in the hospital for 6 weeks with shaken syndrome. And he's suffering now with post-traumatic stress a little bit, and you know, there's a lot of soldiers suffering with that, and we have to help take care of them. You know, God bless America, and thank you for coming.
The captain did mention this in passing, and we are honored this evening to have a Gold Star mother with us, Mrs. Karen Zook. Gold Star mother is the mother of a son or a daughter who died while actively serving our nation. Mrs. Zook became a Gold Star mother October 12, 2004, when her only son, United States Marine Corps Corporal Ian Zook, was killed in action in Iraq. Karen currently serves our community as the local American Gold Star Mothers Incorporated Treasure Coast Chapter President. She also serves as Secretary in the American Gold Star Mothers Department of Florida and Puerto Rico. In honor of her son, Karen is also the volunteer coordinator for Wreaths Across America for Forest Hills Memorial Park in Martin County, where her son is interred. Since her son's death, Karen and her husband Mark adopted and raised 4 older children, 3 of whom now serve in the United States military. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Karen Zook.
I'm very humbled to be here, to stand next to this girder, and to have those 2 lights shining behind me. Because I know what it's like to lose someone. And I know there's family members here that I know personally that lost someone very dear to them on 9/11. And I would just thank you, Dave and Esther. But I thank you that you explained what a Gold Star mother is, and that is a mother who lost a son or a daughter in active duty. On 9/11, when the Pentagon was hit, 184 families became Gold Star families that day, and I don't think that's really known or thought about very much, but that occurred that day. And so I understand the fear and the terror that they have as they're waiting to hear word, or as they're waiting to make preparations for funeral arrangements. And while I was never at New York City with 9/11, I do identify them with grief and sadness, and some days hopelessness and despair. I've held fellow Gold Star mothers in my arms as we cried together. And let me just tell you, it's a hard thing, but we have hope, and that's why we're all here today. We have hope that we can all teach our children and to never forget, always remember the high cost of freedom, that it was paid for a price, and we should never, ever, ever forget. Thank you.
Before we introduce our spiritual leaders here this evening, who will be saying a few words, we'd like to focus on a very special Bible. This Bible that I have in my hand originated its mission on September 16th, 2001, by a San Bernardino Sheriff's Department chaplain by the name of Ron Nosh, who was deployed to the World Trade Center from California to help the rescue workers mentally and spiritually deal with what they were going through. Chaplain Nosh came to the aid of Dennis McKenna, who was a first responder at the World Trade Center that morning and weeks following. Chaplain Nosh became compassionate and gave this Bible to Dennis to use as a symbol of the healing process and to spiritually guide him. This Bible today is known as the 9/11 Responding Bible, which responds to tragedies across the United States and has a diary attached to it to document where it's been and who it responded to. It's been to Aurora, Colorado for the movie theater shooting victims, Newtown, Connecticut for the school shootings there, to local families and servicemen who lost their lives serving our country, to Austin Stephanos' family, the Jupiter teenager, one of the two who was lost at sea. And it most recently has been to Nebraska, to the Graves family who lost their child recently in Orlando. At our last 9/11 memorial, the Bible was scheduled to be blessed by the Pope in New York City, and we are pleased to announce that on September 25th, 2015, at Madison Square Garden in New York, the Holy Father blessed this Bible. The Bible is also scheduled for a memorial in Orlando for the victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting. The unique part about this Bible is not only its mission and to whom it has gone to, but it brings spiritual leaders together just like this evening to share this Bible among their parishioners, because this Bible is a chaplain's Bible meant for all religions and all nationalities, those who believe in the Bible. We are honored to have this particular item, this chaplain's Bible, with us this evening. At this time, I would like to introduce a very special person to the first responders and to many others who live here in Martin County. The man who has demonstrated and shown his spiritual commitment in serving our community and being there in times of need and casting his love and compassion for all our county. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pastor L.C. Campbell.
Our hearts have been touched tonight, have they not? And tonight I would ask you to join our hearts together for a moment of prayer. Our good God and our gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening with hearts that are filled with gratitude. Gratitude for what you have done for us. And gratitude for the lives of so many that have placed their lives on the line for us. Father, this evening, as we feel that cool breeze beginning to blow, we pray that there would be a cool breeze of your blessing across our land. For as a nation, predominantly we have turned away from you. And ironically, today we've seen athletes bend the knee in rebellion and not in prayer. So, Lord, my prayer is that we would bend our knees spiritually back to you and ask that you do exactly what that precious song said. God, bless America. Lord, we come tonight assembling ourselves together. That still is a freedom we share. Oh, we take so many of these blessings for granted. And yet, from time to time, such as September 11, 2001, we are dramatically reminded of how fragile that commodity called freedom is. So may the people of Martin County grab their children and bring them here to the library, not just for a book, but for an observation. May grandparents who have grandchildren here and those who would from time to time visit them in our community, may they take time to bring them right here to this place. And may we as a people commit ourselves afresh and anew this evening, first of all to you, and secondly to one another. And may we experience those things that have made our nation great. And may we again find a pride and that gratitude for all the good that we have available to us. And for those who have given that supreme sacrifice, and for those who are willing day in and day out in our community, our first responders. Bless them, protect them, and may we as a people cooperatively and in unison say, God, continue to bless America. And I pray these things in your strong and mighty name. Amen.
Our next community spiritual leader is Rabbi Matthew Durbin from Temple Beit Hayam in Stuart. He's coming here tonight to offer his spiritual commitment in serving our community. Ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Matthew Durbin.
I come here tonight to offer a prayer. Eternal God, source and creator of all life, from the depths we have called to you, and we call to you again for courage, for strength, for wisdom on this 15th year anniversary of our nation's tragedy. Grant us courage to confront our enemies, to confront those who stand alone without spouse, without parent, brother, sister, or friend. Open our hearts to them and to the children orphaned 15 years ago today. Enable us to love more deeply all children who suffer. Accept with mercy our prayers of healing on behalf of the families of the victims and on behalf of the second and first responders who became ill at Ground Zero. Despite the horror and the tragedy of 9/11, our country remains a shelter of peace, a symbol of freedom, a beacon of light, of compassion and justice to the downtrodden and the oppressed in our world. Strengthen the hands of our people to defend this country and our common values of freedom and of justice. Inspire our leaders and our diplomats to act wisely and to pursue peace at every possibility everywhere in our world. May we teach our children to learn, to think, to consider, and to reason, to be courageous in thought and in deed, and to nurture hearts of wisdom that they may do battle against fear, hatred, bigotry, using weapons of the Spirit and of loving hearts. May we offer our prayers on behalf of our country and our government, our president and judiciary, our officials and institutions, our soldiers and citizens, upon all who faithfully toil for the good of our country, to preserve democracy in our land, to advocate for civility between adversaries, and to treat every human being as infinitely worthy and dignified by virtue of being created B'Tselem Elohim, by being created in God's image. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country, that it may always be a stronghold of peace, and its advocates among the nations. May contentment reign within its borders, health and happiness within its homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among every inhabitant of our world, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Blessed are you, O God, the source of peace. Bestow upon us, O God, the blessings of peace, and may we live to see the day as we hold sacred scriptures with this precious and important Bible, that has gone from city to city, state to state. Bestow upon us the blessings, and most importantly, the words that say, Lo yisal goy el goy charev, velo yimadu od milchama. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, nor shall we train for war anymore. Amen.
Our next spiritual leader has an ongoing relationship with the members of the first responders. He's also responsible for a large Haitian community in Fort Pierce, who depend on his support and guidance. Father Yves is a Catholic priest from the Notre Dame Mission Church in Fort Pierce. Ladies and gentlemen, Father Yves.
It's a great pleasure for me to offer a prayer of remembrance for those who died on 9/11. On this, the 15th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, we pray for those who were killed, for the consolation of their families and friends, and for an end to terrorism. Lord of mercy, Prince of Peace, this date, 9/11, carries a heavy burden of memory. This day does not pass in the calendar without our remembering. We remember images of death and destruction, images that human eyes were never meant to see. We remember words of our ears were never meant to hear. The tender last words of husbands and wives we would never embrace again. We remember the heroism of the many that lost their lives in saving others. We remember all those who suffered and died. We grieve for them still, friends and strangers alike, along with their families and friends. And it is right that it should not pass from our memory. It also seems right that we give voice to our deep longing for peace. And with this prayer, commit ourselves to those actions that will draw us closer to our most ancient and most holy desire, peace among all God's children. May the gifts of God unite us in faith, hope, and love, now and forever. Amen.
At this time, FDNY Captain Christopher McKnight will lay the wreath at this monument in memory of the 343 firefighters and, of course, all of the people whose lives changed forever that September morning. Accompanying Captain McKnight will be Julian Boyce, retired Lieutenant Colonel from the United States Army and a West Point graduate who served for 20 years as a military police officer with several combat tours. She's also the Veterans Chair for the Palpatioke chapter of Daughters of the American Revolution. We would now ask our Gold Star mother, Karen Zook, to come forward to ring this bell, 333. Ladies and gentlemen, Amazing Grace performed by John Creighton, who is a St. Lucie County firefighter and also a member of the Treasure Coast Pipes and Drums. John, thank you very much. Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our tribute for 2016, remembering what happened 15 years ago, 2011, or September 11th, 2001. We thank you all for coming, and we would like to leave you with some more music from a very special person who's joining us just about every time we've had one of these tributes. Let's hear again from Doc Holloway.
God.